Hi, and welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. Today I'm in Chicago, Illinois, taking a tour of Eataly, which is a pretty famous Italian eatery. So I wanted to take you on a tour today and talk to you about the idea of food and theming at this amazing experience in Chicago. So let's begin the tour.
Okay, so we'll begin the tour today here at Eataly, Chicago, during my visit in 2018. I'll show you some photos and videos and also talk a little bit about the history and the development of the concept of Eataly, which is growing throughout the world. So founded in 2007 by an Italian businessman named Oscar Ferrenti. And he basically took a abandoned factory in Turin, Italy, and turned it into Eataly. So as I understand Eataly, the concept is it combines the traditional idea of a mall, but more of a food mall with multiple areas, as you see here with the Nutella bar, that offer everything from hot food to deli items, as I'll show you with some of the cheese and meat and so forth. A really extensive wine selection, olive oils, all sorts of pasta, as you might imagine. And this image coming up here shows you the original concept of Farnetti in 2002, essentially a drawing on a napkin, and how this became a reality. And the idea of Eataly in terms of the name is, of course, a portmanteau of the words eat and Italy. So it establishes certainly the identity up front that it's about eating in terms of branding, and it's also Italian themed. So what you'll see throughout the store then are reflections of all sorts of Italian cuisine. You'll see here that they have quite a few restaurants opening or having opened in the United States. The one at the Park MGM in Las Vegas is very interesting to me. There are, in all, I believe, 40 locations throughout the world, of course, quite a few in Italy and beyond. I don't have them all pictured here. I did read that there was one in Copenhagen, I believe, that closed recently, so it'd be interesting to know what the reason for that was. And I'm always interested, in demographics and why a concept like this is successful or not successful. These are some of the eating areas, and I have to say, I'll show you later a pasta I had, and it was absolutely amazing. And that food experience is kind of cool. So this is in an area in Chicago where a lot of business people, say for lunch, could come and have a quick bite to eat. Of course, it's also ideal for tourists. I think it has to me, a very destination feel, and I think it helps with some of the place branding in some of the places where Eatalys are opening up worldwide. And I think you might notice here that there are certainly elements of theming, and in talking about this video, I don't certainly imply that this is a theme park per se, but there are elements of theme park design, technology, and approaches that maybe match with what they're doing here as a space that is really a destination, combination of a food hall, experiential space. Reminds me a little bit of some of the food exhibits I saw at the World Expo 2015 in Milan. Here's an olive oil display. The olive oils here were just amazing. I mean, you had bottles of olive oil that were hundreds and hundreds of dollars, as you can see here. Over $159. This is, really a foodie's dream, and I think that's one thing about this space that maybe it has to think about, the work of sociologist Pierre Bourdieu, it has a maybe high upper middle class association just because of foodies, and also just because of the price points. I mean, you can certainly buy a package of Italian cookies for a couple bucks, but you can also spend hundreds on the olive oil and wines and so forth, and cheeses and meats. And one of the things I was thinking about, just from a logistics standpoint, is imagine trying to be the head of inventory at Eataly. And I'm pointing here again, look at the price of that olive oil. It's pretty big, but man, that's a lot, 160 bucks. So aside from the inventory, there certainly is a class level here, I think, that reminds you that there's a certain demographic of customer, maybe that they're gearing their products and experiences towards. And I was thinking and looking at these video elements I took during my visit in 2018 that, because there is, I think, for me, a reminder of the World Expo in Milan and a little bit of the world of theme parks, I think it might be interesting in the future if, particularly in the experiential destination locations, I'm thinking at the one they're opening at the Park MGM in Las Vegas, if they could bring in more aspects of experiential and immersive design, because I think one of their elements of their manifesto, their ideology, their corporate identity is to have some educational experiences. And I think if that's the case, you might envelop the guests a little bit more in some of the experiences. For me, it was fascinating and interesting. I'm really interested in food and the experiences of food. And so for me, it wasn't a problem feeling immersed in this space. And indeed, I think the minute you walk in the door, you feel this sense of being really a part of this food world of Italy. Now, in keeping with this educational design, if you will, you see these 8 rules. They have some policies here. The customer is not always right. Eataly is not always right. And through our differences, we create harmony. So there is, I think, some attempt to focus on values a little bit. And so that is kind of an interesting play on the tradition of, the customer is always right. This is from Eataly's website, and I encourage you to go and check it out, because in addition to this manifesto where they talk about food as unity and being in love with food, they talk about other aspects of the history behind the company, how it opened up and so forth. You could see here passion and quality products, quality of life, target audience, eat, shop, and learn. So 5 in this manifesto is really that emphasis on education. We're in this together, again, the communal values and some promises of choice, accessibility, and knowledge. And I think this manifesto, by the way, is pretty cool, and you could check it out on their website. Trust is earned every day, and an end goal. So I think this is very important. Not every company or not every space certainly has like an identity statement or a statement of values, a manifesto, a statement of principles. So pretty cool. So indeed, check out the website, because it has much more than the corporate history. It talks about the locations. It discusses the opportunities for guests to purchase things online, which is good, having that virtual identity in addition to the physicality. And I think Eataly is a great example of how traditional brick and mortar spaces can maintain relevance in this world of virtual shopping and virtual consumerism. And they have to have that virtual platform, but then having a destination space that has these elements, homemade mozzarella where you can watch it actually being made, that's not going to port well to a virtual environment. You could have a video of someone making something, but it's not going to be, as this sign says with the traditional map, choose your experience. It's not going to be an experience. And for me, that's the reminder of Eataly in this world of virtual consumer spaces and virtual experiences, is if you think about having a destination space that has experiences like Eataly, that may draw the guest in. It's going to help with place branding for the local community as well. Now, as you look at this map, for me, this really does mark the space a little bit. And we'll take some video up the escalator, and you get a sense of the panorama here and how massive this space is, multiple floors and all. Again, a little more of that, not logo there, but a message to the visitor, which is, I think, always important for a space like this. That is focusing on experiences and values and community emphases, and also a little bit of that education. And to return to the map I was showing you earlier, the map that I said, reminds me of the theme park. I think you could certainly argue that, of course, Eataly also maybe reminds and is reminiscent of the shopping mall, because you go into a mall and there are multiple spaces, and you often have a map that orients the guest in that space. But of course, what's different about Eataly is the fact, as you see the cheese bar here with some very fine and exquisite cheeses. Some of the salamis and meats will be coming up on as well. But what designates this space, of course, is the fact that it's all focused on Italian food. And as I mentioned earlier, with the inventory involved, that itself, the scale of the opportunities for the guest to really partake in something that maybe you couldn't partake in unless you were in Italy itself, allows for that experience dimension that also reminds of the theme park, because the theme park, of course, is often about combining multiple experiences, not just of a culinary nature, often rides and immersive technologies and shows and shops and everything of that nature. But in a space like this, because the emphasis is on food and not just the experience of that food, but the educational aspects, you do see, of course, a distinction between Eataly and the shopping mall and the theme park. But I think those historical reference points, I think, are important because, of course, in any of the spaces that we visit today, there's always references to the past in terms of what has come before. And I was going to say that if you are a student of themed and immersive design, you might look at a space like Eataly and ask some significant questions about what makes it successful. Indeed, as we look at the website still here that I mentioned earlier, if you're thinking about the significance of spaces that are physical in the world of virtual shopping and virtual consumerism and Cyber Monday and all that, you can maybe look to Eataly and some similar spaces as reference points for the future. I was just reading an article very recently that was talking about the death of virtual reality. And if that's true, if virtual reality is not maybe coming to be what we thought it would be years ago, then there are new opportunities perhaps for spaces like Eataly to really create experiences and to give the guest something that is physical and experiential, emotional, sensorial, and all the like, in such a way that it gives us opportunities to avoid simply hanging out on Facebook, sitting on our couch, watching Netflix, and so forth. This gets us out of our homes. We're looking here at the pasta aisle, and I have to say the pasta here is absolutely just amazing. All the different types, the squidding pastas and the different regions and the different styles, if you will, of pastas. And here are the sauces as well. Just really, really massive. And a space like this, again, uses its breadth, its inventory, its ability to capture all of these culinary experiences and bring them to you without you having to travel. That being said, as I said earlier, and this talks a little bit about the types of pasta, I think what they could do is they could take some of that cultural experience and maybe do a little bit more. They could have some interactive displays. And here's one of these expensive pasta sauces. I think it's just pureed tomatoes, like $50 for this. So hopefully it's pretty good. It's a pretty big bottle, but still kind of a lot to spend, and then you have to think about taking that home. And by the way, I was wondering, with the Vegas location opening up at the Park MGM, I understand totally the idea that a typical, let's say, visitor to the Strip would come into that Eataly location. As we look at some more pastas here, this one's pretty amazing, actually, the size, the length of that pasta. A couple feet long as I pan the camera down there. Really cool to look at, fascinating, different. I've never seen pasta like that myself. I don't know if you have. But what I'm thinking is that with the Vegas location, how is that going to work in terms of, say, typical customers who maybe are just there to visit the Strip and they're not necessarily going to take some of these fresh items back to their room? I could see them eating in the restaurants, but what about actually buying the inventory, which is, I would imagine, a pretty big aspect of their bottom line and what they're looking for in terms of profit. So I'll have to see what happens at the Park MGM version of Eataly as we compare it to the version here in Chicago. So it's maybe an opportunity in the future for me to do another video there and to do a comparison, because I think as you open in a new location, you have to think about how the demographics, the reason for visiting, the spaces associated or around the Eataly are maybe different. Here's my pasta, which was so good. It was freshly made and it was just absolutely one of the best pasta dishes I have had. So that is certainly a good opportunity to say that they've done it right in terms of the food. So I think we'll bring the video to a close today. I wanted to give you just an overview of Eataly in Chicago. For me, it's an opportunity to think about the future of spaces as they compete with virtual spaces out there and virtual consumerism. A lot to offer here in terms of food, experience, and education at Eataly in Chicago.
All right, I hope you enjoyed the tour here of Eataly in Chicago, looking at the amazing aspects of theming food here, Italian style. Pretty amazing place to visit if you get a chance to come to Chicago, so check it out. And of course, please come back for additional video features of the Immersive Worlds Handbook.